Skyrim is one of the most popular games of all time. It launched to critical acclaim, defined childhoods, and has consumed thousands of hours of people's lives. It set a new standard for RPGs, introduced countless gamers to the genre, and has since been released on almost every platform known to man. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Todd Howard has me playing Skyrim on my Apple Watch by this time next year. In my opinion, the game is a masterpiece, and one of the greatest RPGs to ever release. But did it truly improve on its predecessor in every single way? I think not. So here are 5 things that, in my humble opinion, Oblivion did better than Skyrim. Number 1. NPC visual design. No, I'm just winding you up. I mean, look at this guy. Jesus, even the Daedra are scared of this guy. No. Number 1, for real this time, is the way that Oblivion handled the main story, and specifically your role as the protagonist. Being the hero of Kvatch rather than the Dragonborn was for me a much more immersive experience. It might just be me wanting to scratch that classic RPG itch that less and less games appeal to these days, but there's just something deeply satisfying about starting an RPG as a total nobody and working your way up from there, step by painful step. Yes, I know you're not quite a nobody in Oblivion. The Emperor sees you in his dreams after all. But you're not a demigod dragonborn either. You don't have some innate superpower waiting to be realised. You're just a petty criminal rotting in the Imperial prison when your story begins. You're also not really the main character. In terms of the focal character in the story, it's actually all about Martin Septim and his destiny to restore peace to Tamriel, whereas Skyrim's story is very much focused around you as the supremely important main character. And I don't know, it just feels like that's become more and more prevalent in modern RPGs. Maybe it's just me, but being the main character and having everything revolve around you and your actions feels like it results in you losing some of that classic RPG feeling of building your own unique story, rather than just falling in with a more cookie-cutter experience. This cookie-cutter approach definitely works in a more cinematic game, where the storytelling is more tightly dialed in to the point that it just makes sense to experience it through the lens of the main character. Like playing as Geralt in The Witcher, for example. But I don't think Elder Scrolls is that type of experience. After all, Elder Scrolls games are all about player choice, and if the main character's individual narrative is too tightly coupled with the main story plot, then meaningful choices become more and more limited. And in this sense, at least in my opinion, Oblivion did it better than Skyrim. Moving on to number 2, custom spellmaking. Now, many may not be aware of this, but Oblivion actually allowed players to create their own spells. And despite the fact that it was pretty broken at times and probably gave too much power to our characters, it was incredibly fun. And it represented a fairly unique RPG mechanic that just further added to that feeling of deep customization that the Elder Scrolls games are famous for. Spellmaking encouraged experimentation and discovery, and players could customize spells to complement their unique playstyles. You could test different combinations to find the most effective or creative spell setup, and tailor magic to the exact needs of your build, rather than just having to fit in with the standardized spells offered by Skyrim. This also added to the tremendous replayability of the game, as the options for a magic-focused character in Oblivion were incredibly vast due to this feature. All that being said, I definitely understand why Skyrim didn't continue with the spellmaking feature, as Bethesda were essentially presented with the challenge of trying to balance the game after some of the crazy imbalances in Oblivion. I'll leave you to make a judgment on how well they actually managed to do that. But on top of this, they also had to avoid system bloat and complexity that would make the game less accessible to a mass audience. And clearly they did a pretty good job of that. So yeah, I get it, but damn, it was a really fun feature to have in the game. This actually leads quite neatly into number 3, which is character customization and class building. Now, as messy and complicated as it was, Oblivion definitely offered a more complex and in-depth character building system when compared with Skyrim. And this gave players a greater sense of freedom in building unique characters, which is particularly appealing to an old school RPG enjoyer such as myself. There are a number of things that contributed to this level of build customization in Oblivion, including the impact of meaningful race and birth sign choices, as well as the ability to pick from a wide variety of predefined classes or even build a brand new custom class of your own. Granted, some of these choices were totally useless, but the variety of choice and the option to customize did give you the ability to create far more unique characters. Add to that the much larger variety of stats that you could choose to specialize in, and the ability to create custom spells, as discussed previously, and you could easily start to see how Oblivion really allowed you to produce some creative and unique builds that just wouldn't be possible in Skyrim. I can only describe this as resulting in more of an old school Dungeons and Dragons type feel to designing and developing your character, where the sky's the limit. Well, obviously not quite, but it came much closer to that feeling than Skyrim. I personally think that this sort of system results in richer character identity, and is truer to the fantasy role-playing roots of the classic RPG, the clue's in the name after all. I also feel like this is something that's been lost to an extent when it comes to more modern RPGs, and the simplification of Skyrim systems was definitely a contributor to this given its massive popularity. All that being said, the more in-depth character building system in Oblivion led to a pretty convoluted leveling system, which was a bit of a pain in the arse to be honest. So things were definitely not all sunshine and roses, and I can definitely understand why Skyrim simplified things for the masses. Another credit to the changes made by Skyrim is that they don't actually lock you into anything aside from your race, which only really offers minor benefits in the big scheme of your playthrough. Whereas birth sign and race in Oblivion do make you feel that you need to progress down a certain path in order to complement those choices. However, I do think that overall Skyrim did lose some of that RPG magic that was present in Oblivion due to the removal of the more in-depth character building systems of its predecessor. Number 4 is very subjective, but let's be honest, this whole video is. However, despite the difference in graphics due to the year in which each game was produced, I think that Oblivion offers the more immersive and beautiful game world. Cyrodiil has this distinct, almost dreamlike quality to it. The world feels vibrant and mystical, and there's something about its soft lighting and colourful palette that really give the game a sense of wonder and high fantasy. This contrasts with Skyrim's colder, more rugged tone, which, while atmospheric in its own right, offers a harsher and greyer environment overall. Oblivion also excels in the diversity of its biomes. Despite Cyrodiil being a single province, just like Skyrim, it offers multiple distinct environments. From the thick swampy marshes of Blackwood to the golden sunlit fields of Skingrad, each region has its own unique aesthetic and feel. Whereas in Skyrim, the more monochromatic Nordic theme tends to dominate most of the map, leading to a more homogeneous feel during long play sessions. The cities of Oblivion are also more distinct in my opinion, each featuring their own architectural styles that reflect their region's culture and geography, and this variety makes each city feel more memorable. Whereas Skyrim cities, while charming in their own right, often feel more uniform and less standout. It just feels like Oblivion's atmosphere and environmental design result in a more magical and diverse world with that strong sense of high fantasy. While Skyrim leans more into a cold, gritty realism which, while immersive, doesn't inspire the same sense of wonder. At least in one player's opinion, but clearly this is very much based on individual taste. The final thing that I think Oblivion did better than Skyrim is guild storylines. Now, this isn't to say that the Skyrim guild storylines are bad, they're definitely not. I just genuinely think that the storylines in Oblivion offered more authenticity and depth. For example, the Dark Brotherhood questline in Oblivion is still one of my all-time favourites. Players are tasked with carrying out creative assassinations that represent incredibly enjoyable individual missions, while at the same time the overall story builds up tension around the mysterious antagonist Lucien Lachance, ultimately leading to a shocking betrayal that culminates in the Brotherhood's collapse. The whole experience oozes authenticity by consistently honouring the assassination theme, not just in storytelling terms, but through quests that focus on assassination gameplay, rather than using combat-heavy dungeons as a crutch in the way that Skyrim does for many of its guilds. In particular, the Whodunit quest, where you have to kill party guests at Summermist Manor without being caught, is a standout moment in RPG questing, in my opinion. Skyrim's Dark Brotherhood questline, while still awesome to be fair, is a bit more straightforward and it doesn't offer the same intricate twists and turns as Oblivion, and nor does it focus so heavily on the assassination gameplay that its predecessor did so well. Though, to Skyrim's credit, the way that the story starts is way cooler. Similar can be said about the Thieves Guild, which in Oblivion offers individually engaging theft-based missions, while simultaneously building its storyline around a larger, more epic narrative involving the Grey Fox. The missions themselves offer that same authenticity and focus on the core mechanics of the Thief playstyle, requiring stealth, ingenuity, and subtlety. Again, Skyrim's Thieves Guild is a great questing experience, but it leans more towards combat and it has fewer pure stealth elements, which I think waters down that focus on Thief gameplay, especially after Oblivion set the bar so high. That being said, I don't think the Fighters Guild is any better than the Companions, and the Mages Guild in my opinion is a bit underwhelming in both games. But overall, I think Oblivion did a better job with guilds than Skyrim. Anyway, this has been quite the departure from my normal guide-based content. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and if so, I'll make more content like this. Also, maybe consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel for more RPG content in the future. And I will see you in the next one.